Well, thanks for tuning into the Farmville Spotlight. This is the last Thursday of September 25th. And joining us today, we have the winner of the Farmville 15, the last competition round. We had Jeremy Elder, who is, I believe, from Virginia. Jeremy, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I grew up right over in Charlotte County here. I live about 10 miles from where I grew up, and I live in Charlotte Courthouse. I grew up in Madisonville, and went away a little bit here and there, but mainly I've lived in the same house for since 1999. That's the
Wow.
longest. That's the longest I've lived anywhere. I went to 3 different kindergartens, so that's a broad
experience.
Yeah, broad experience. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. It's the same house since 1999. How's that been like?
It's strange. It's comforting to know where you're coming home to every night.
Exactly, yeah.
But at the same time, it's things get irritating.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's like
Yeah.
that's a big commitment. Like that's longer than some marriages. If you think about it like that.
Well, I've known my wife since I was in 6th grade and she was in 5th grade.
Wow.
We've been married since '97, but we've been together a lot longer than that. So
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. Well, Jeremy, can you take us back to your first memories of maybe back in your childhood that kind of shaped the way you listened to music, thought about music?
Well, when I was really little, my parents were really young, and we went to the bluegrass festivals and stuff like that, and state fairs, and I actually saw Ernest Tubb when I was a little boy.
Yeah.
I think he died around 1980, so that's kind of telling you my age. But my first real musical memory is I was probably about 3 or 4 riding on the West Virginia Turnpike, sitting listening to the 8-track of John Prine.
Wow.
In the car, so singing along with Paradise, and John Prine's music really shaped me a lot. But
Interesting.
But I have I listen. My influences are from punk to old times. So
Really, you got into the punk scene when you were a teenager?
Yeah, with skateboarding and
Yeah.
stuff like that. We got introduced to it. Of course, living out in the middle of nowhere, you don't really have access to cool record shops and stuff like that.
Definitely.
But what I could get, people would move in from elsewhere and bring their
Ramones CDs or vinyls.
Yeah. Mixtapes and stuff of
definitely.
and there was a college radio station I could get out of North Carolina that would have an underground show like late at night, and
Wow.
I couldn't stay up that late, but I would unplug the speakers on my stereo, and I knew when to push the record button. So the next morning I'd have 30 minutes of that radio show,
Nice.
once a week. So that's and I had a few of those tapes.
That's very cool. Yeah, radio is very influential in, I feel like, learning and finding new things in music, different genres, different tastes.
Yeah.
Definitely radio has shaped the way I listen to music, or what I like even. I remember tuning into, obviously I came up around when the internet was there, it was available, you could use it.
Yeah.
But I remember tuning into WFMU, which was a radio station out of New York, and they play a lot of indie underground music, and it's you kind of get a fondness for it almost, and you find a love. So that's very interesting. Were your parents always into music?
My dad had friends that were musicians and stuff, and they'd come over, and my dad played guitar a little bit on and off, my childhood, but not later on. And I really didn't pick up. In high school, I started singing. I've always been a singer and sung in choirs and youth choirs and stuff like that. And I wrote a lot, and then kind of in high school, I started writing lyrics and poems and stuff like that, and sang with some bands. And I really thought that eventually I'd be in this cool band and
tour around a little bit.
Be the lead singer kind of thing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then and I was really starting to write a lot. And so when I went away to art school, I bought a guitar before I went and started teaching myself how to play so I could keep writing. And I haven't been in a band since. You know,
Wow.
That's 35 years ago. So
I've interviewed some bands and then some solo musicians. It's always interesting to hear, people talk from experience about being in a band where it's more like it's not even you're a part of it,
Yeah.
but it's like an other organism, which is like very interesting. But I'm sure, have you noticed any benefits from performing more solo, and
yeah,
having
it's pushed me on my musicianship and to actually play more than I ever intended, and actually practice playing more,
Yeah.
I guess is one of the things. And but at the same time, you have full control of your sound and that kind of and what you're doing. You don't have to. There's no compromises. The only compromises, your only limits are your own abilities.
Yeah.
So, you don't have to play the song if you don't want to.
that makes sense. Yeah.
But it, I've kind of watched myself, because you have all these recordings and stuff, and watch myself grow, as a songwriter and as a performer and stuff over the years. And it's really, really neat to be able to look back at that. I'm sure people, even 50 years ago really didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
They might have some Super 8 footage from one show or something like that.
It was much harder to kind of find
Yeah.
those.
Or, they would have had maybe recordings off the, of radio interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But to not really know what you look like and what you sound like, to other people.
Yes.
It's like,
Definitely. Well, let me ask you about like your songwriting, because you write a lot of your own songs. Do you also cover, maybe some more, some older songs as well? You do different renditions, but you do a lot of your own writing when it comes to music. Is that right?
Yeah, probably right now my performances are about 90% original, and then I do a lot of traditional stuff, and then if it's a cover, technically a cover, like there's an actually attributable songwriter, it's usually from maybe the 20s or something like that.
So you're really going back in the archives, kind of.
Yeah, and I do new arrangements as well. They're usually, I'm not copying another performer's version of something. I'll a lot of times I take it totally apart and put it back together, and
kind of like an homage to the original songwriter. That is really interesting. Do you notice how like people react listening to those? Do you ever notice like people recognizing some of these like older songs?
Yeah, sometimes, and usually I'll have people my age or a little bit older come up to say, and my dad used to play that song for me. I really love your version, or my dad would have really loved to, or mom or whatever would have really loved to hear that, or something like that. And it's really, really nice. So I'm still drawing from some life experiences. People aren't coming and saying, well, what's this or what's that, and generally, when I've had some issues like booking and stuff, and says, well, you don't do any covers. It says no, and I've never had any complaints, and I've played hundreds of shows, and I said, just give me a chance, let me play, see how it goes, and I've always rebooked, so I've never had a problem getting booked again.
That's beautiful. That's really nice.
And that's all I want to do. I don't want to be a cover band.
You don't want to sell out. You either have like massive. It's nice that that they want that when you perform back, and it's gonna be nice.
And when you think about it, people have on their phone or whatever, on the computer, they can listen to any song just about that's ever been recorded at any time. When they're coming to one of my shows, they're going to hear something they've never heard before, unless they've been to one of my other shows.
Exactly.
But, and in a different way as well. I know some people, I rarely even get requests, for things. Sometimes it's people that have had a lot to drink or something, and play me some Skinner or something.
Oh,
like that.
Yeah.
But,
those are always the the talkers at a crowd.
Yeah, and it's not like they really even want to hear the song. They just want to be. They
want
to be seen.
They want to connect. They want to communicate to you.
They can start a band. They can be seen.
Yeah, you're there just to kind of set the atmosphere and provide the music for the evening or day,
Yeah.
whenever you have a show.
Yeah, and different venues, it's a different show too. You know, like restaurants and stuff. You're more background music, but you know, some of the places I've played, it's been more of a listening room situation where they are known for people coming to hear music there. It's not like it's an added thing. It's part of the main thing, and you have regulars that come in there and they really want to hear something different, something new.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Let me ask you. So, when was the first time you wrote a song? Do you have that information? Do you know what song that is?
I don't have the song. I don't remember what it was about or anything, but it's a really cool story. My uncle, I was like, on my dad's side, was like the first grandchild, and it was a while before anybody else was born. So my aunts and uncles would take me to movies and stuff like that. And somebody took me to see Saturday Night Fever. And I was really excited about the I told you this is a good story.
Yeah.
And I was really excited about the music and stuff. And I came back to I'm sure I was staying with my grandparents in the summer, and my grandmother had a piano, and she sat down with me. I wrote a song out, and she sat down with me, and she basically helped me write the music for it.
Wow.
And unfortunately, I don't have it. I don't know what it said. You know, you're 9 years old,
Sure,
and you don't know to keep those kind of things. But it wasn't disco or anything.
Okay.
I know, but it was probably some kind of sappy love song kind of thing.
Inspired by the disco era of music and John Travolta.
Yeah. It was yeah.
That's very cool. That's very cool. But you've been writing for a while, right? Like all your life. I mean, if that was the first time and you were 9 years old, I'm sure that kind of
it's been periods
ups
where
and downs.
Where I was more active. You know, like 9, and then I probably didn't write another song until I was in high school. So
okay.
it was,
but it was there. It was almost like you know, the coals are warm. It just you needed to stoke the fire a little bit. So.
Always have loved music and you know and singing and it's just it's really a major part of my life.
Let me ask you this, Jeremy. So, you know, you've been writing music for a while. I talk to people because, like, to write a song, I feel like it takes a lot. And I feel like everybody has their own style of writing. I think that's a very fair thing. Some people are more, I would say, even improv with their writing. They'll just start, you know, playing their guitar and then make up some words. And then they're like, hey, there's something there. And then write it down. But, like, when you go to approach to write a song, is it something that you get inspired by and you're like, I got to write this down now? Or do you sit down and then just like, I got to write a song, let me think about it? I'm not saying it's the same way every time either. I'm sure it's, you know, it's a little bit of everything, but how do you approach that?
Well, in the last few years, I actually keep notebooks where if I have an idea or phrases or a chorus or something, like the words, I'll write them down, you know, and I start out with a little tiny little notebook I can stick in my pocket, and then I'll go and move that to a bigger notebook, and sometimes I write the song in that notebook. But that's like just catching those moments of inspiration, and usually my inspiration, I'm not originally a musician, so I don't have like, you know, ideas for licks and stuff. You know, I might noodle around and come up with a lick or something, but it's just not what I'm inspired to do, and those kind of things don't happen for me. But so I'll have all these little notes and stuff, and I might come up with, you know, a single line, and sometimes that'll happen where something hits you and you're like, oh, I got to write, and then then I sit down and I write that line down, and I start looking for chords and looking for changes and go ahead and write. But usually the song starts with the music, and then I say, well, what does this sound like? What story is this sound making and talking about? And I might have something that I've already started, or I might just say, you know, and sometimes I might like, you know, sing nonsense, la da da da, you know, that kind of thing,
sure,
as I'm going along. But but usually, the music starts it, and I feel a lot through the music, and then the words come or fall. Either they come or they fall into place. I've have some notes or something, and it falls into place. And sometimes a song could take 20 minutes to write.
Sure.
And I've got some I worked on and off on for years, and usually those are the ones that I wrote far too much, where it just kept coming, and it's 12, 15 minutes long. It's like,
wow.
No, and eventually I'll cut it back, or add a bridge, or change a chorus, or add a chord. Just rearrange things. So,
yeah.
And nothing's set in stone. They're mine, so I can, and the stuff that I do, the traditional stuff, and the stuff, the older stuff, I really can play around with it, because it's, that's what it's there for.
It makes a lot of sense.
That's what folk music is for, is to mess with.
Exactly. It's not just to be like, this is set in stone. It's more of a constantly evolving way of looking at it in the lyrics and interpretations. Yeah. Wow, that's very cool. Well, you kind of made me think of a question, actually, and that is, do you have longer songs that are like 12 to 14 minutes? I've always found that interesting.
Yeah, I've got some, about this that I perform that are probably about 7 minutes, and some of them were a little bit longer, and I've just dropped some verses out of them.
Yeah.
There's some. I guess there's some songs that have alternate verses.
Sure.
I guess that's what you would say.
That makes sense. Well, that's very interesting. Well, and you also have a lot of shows you perform too. You perform in this area, a little bit outside as well.
Yeah, this year I've had a lot of medical issues, and it started right when I start booking for the season. I usually start booking around December, and that's when all of the medical issues that I've been having started. And I went ahead and did my bookings, but I booked really light, probably about a third of what I would have ideally wanted to do.
Sure.
And I didn't know it, when I started booking, that I wouldn't have to, cancel them all. But I haven't had to cancel anything. I think I'll be sitting down for this one. I have a show at Three Roads in Lynchburg Friday with another songwriter, Mr. John Spangler. And we do a only songwriter show together, where we trade off sets for the show.
Wow.
And, it goes fairly well.
So it kind of like not dueling, but kind of like he plays a song, then you play a song.
Sets.
Okay.
Gotcha.
He'll
open and I'll close, and we'll do like 30-minute sets and trade back and forth, and there's no break in the music, and it's and his music is a lot different than mine, so it's
I've listened to some of his music. He actually dropped by to give me a CD one time, so put that in. He's got a very unique way of playing music. I'll give him that for sure.
Yeah,
is very, very interesting. Well, let's talk about a little bit, if you're comfortable with you have been kind of having some medical issues that are, and how's that been for you? Trying to play shows.
My daughter and I had the same GP, and we went for our annual. And we had a new nurse practitioner, and she just didn't like how I looked, So that's why we're on radio today. But and so she ran a bunch of tests, and some of them came back, and it was just I had some numbers that were off the charts, and everybody was freaking out and started doing more tests and more tests and more tests, and here it is, middle of September, and and still no diagnosis.
Wow. Yeah.
So I'm getting by. I'm far from 100%, and sometimes I've been 30%, and sometimes I've been 75%, but I haven't canceled any shows, and
that's really a dedication to the.
And so far, knock
craft.
On wood, I don't have anything that serious yet.
Yeah, and hopefully they can find a diagnosis. Hopefully something. I'm sure it would be nothing too serious. But yeah, no, that's incredibly hard. I can imagine trying to perform. Do you ever feel like it may affect the way you perform? Because
you know what?
I guess the unknown is difficult.
Yeah, really. so far, like standing up and performing and singing and stuff, it's like the best anesthesia for me.
Okay.
It's you know, nothing medical is really, I mean, my levels and stuff have gotten improved, and I'm normal in certain respects, but the you know the music is a good distraction, and I've written a lot during this, and I can't play as much as I'd like to because I prefer to stand up and perform, and some of the things that have happened, affected my back and so forth, my bones, and so there's things limitations I have. But, but the music at least has been there. It's comforting to have something that I can still do.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm sure. This time is giving you kind of time to reflect on songwriting and kind of maybe even get into it more than you're already into it somewhere.
Yeah.
So, but
it's a good way to work through things too, and I do that more now with my music than I ever have. And sometimes sometimes it's really intellectual. It's not about feelings or anything. It's just thinking through things, and then I think through them basically out loud. I guess,
It's such a great way to look at it, though. Yeah. Wow. Well, let's change the subject a little bit.
Sure.
Obviously, you are obviously heavily influenced by traditional songs and in music, and it kind of shows in your performances as well. That you really do have you like the history of music, and the original folk artists of that, the time.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, is there any modern kind of day artists that you also kind of really like?
Well, there's a ton of really great music going on, and my daughter's 12. I take her to punk shows, and we just went and saw Lucy Dacus in Richmond, and that was just a phenomenal show. Slow Pulp opened for her, and that is as far from old time as you can get. So I mean, and it's there's a ton, and I'm the worst about remembering names and so forth. But that's fresh in my mind. We saw the Linda Lindas at the Camel. They're phenomenal young women. They've opened for the Rolling Stones, but they're really rootsy, kind of Blondie era, punk, punk adjacent, group. And I think the youngest one was like 10 when they started the band.
Wow. Okay.
There's a lot of these bands, young bands that are starting that went through the School of Rock, and you go to a summer camp and you start a band, and then 6 months later you're touring. It's
incredible.
It's crazy.
It's crazy how things can change in such a short
and people
span of time.
still want that live experience, and they're obviously not paying most people for what they're recording, so at least you can get paid in front of people.
And also, I think it's just a different experience watching a musician live. I mean, you can love their music, love their albums, but the live performance is not the same as listening to their music, I think.
Yeah, and there's some groups that I've seen live that I've bought their record and listened to it once. It's just they're so much better live, and that's what I remember, and that's what I want. Usually when I go see a show, and it's a opening act that I don't know, I stay not knowing. I don't look at a clip or anything. I just want to be surprised, and that's what we did with Lucy Dacus the other night. I hadn't listened to that group before, but I've gone, and this happens a lot with it's not like bluegrass groups, but groups that came, younger people that came out of bluegrass, and then they're kind of Americana, stuff, and it seems like some of that overproduction just goes on through with the records, and that's just something I'm not into.
Interesting.
And most people I could see live and just love, because there's the sound is different, the nuance and the performance is different. When somebody's playing something, unless they're a robot, it's going to be a little different each time, and
I'm sure the venue also has a
Yeah,
level
yeah,
of
yeah,
like,
yeah. And who's
it
doing
changes.
sound and
Yeah,
stuff like
exactly.
that, and who, you know, what kind of microphones and where the microphones are and so forth. That's one good thing about doing solo and doing all your setup and doing all your sound is like you're
In control. You're in the driver's seat.
and any mistakes, it's your mistake, and you can fix it the next time. If you don't, if you're not, if you're just, some of these groups touring, going to these little clubs, they might have Jimmy Jack or somebody's cousin running sound that night that has never touched a soundboard in their
Exactly.
life.
Yes. Yeah. And that can cause quite a hectic scene for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Wow.
It's like when you say, "I want more in the monitor," and it's like, "What's a monitor?"
What's a what do you want more of? Like, oh man. Well, let me ask you this, kind of in the same vein as all of this. Do you have any shows, maybe like live shows that you performed at, for better or worse, that stand out to you? Whether somebody really was able to connect the music, or maybe there was a heckler in the crowds, maybe had a little too much to drink.
Yeah, this here's one that's a little bittersweet. Oh shoot! Now I'm gonna drop that. Just like I said, I forget names. Trapezium Brewing. They had a venue out in an old mill in Amherst, and they had an outdoor stage and picnic tables and so forth. They paid really good. The crowd was just great. People would come and eat their meal, and they'd stay. You'd have a full, basically a full house sitting out there of people. They were just enjoying the music. They weren't there, it wasn't just background music to them. And they tipped really well, and they, especially when you're doing like the shows John and I do together, where one of us is playing and the other person's walking around or sitting down and stuff, and people come up to, "Oh, I really like this song you did, and how you did that, and where y'all playing again." That you can interact more with the audience. And that's one drawback from doing everything solo, is you really don't have that experience. And when you get there, you're setting everything up on your own, and then as soon as you're done, if you want to get out, you have to go ahead and start breaking down.
So connecting with the audience is a big one.
Well,
having the time.
that's the whole point, because that's one thing. I have a fine arts background, and what it's always been, what's the point of doing anything if you're not sharing it with somebody? If I'm just gonna be doing this for myself, just keep a sketchbook.
Exactly.
Why do
it live?
Why do anything else? And and it's hard. And two, coming from a working class background, it's hard for me to do anything that I'm not going to get paid for. And it's some people that don't have to work for a living might find that not agree with that, but that's just been my life. It's just like I have to say, well, you have to weigh the pros and cons, and you have a family, and
it's the art of balancing things, I think. Too.
And to me too, I mean, if you're doing something, you're doing it well, and people are enjoying it, you deserve to be paid for it.
Yes.
And if you're not tipping your musicians, you're not tipping your wait staff, you're not tipping, if you're not tipping, in this culture,
you need to
you're
not
getting something. You're getting something for free. That
it's
you don't
almost
deserve.
like piracy in a sense. Where
people get things for free too much, especially people that could afford to pay for it too.
Definitely. Yeah, it always kind of blew me away working a little bit in the customer, like restaurants and stuff. Just the type of people who don't tip and don't even see it as a problem. And again, I get there's some situations where maybe something happened, but I think generally I like to look at the positive of like people and humanity, and I am like, well, maybe they're going through something, who
Yeah,
knows, but
yeah,
like it's
yeah.
sometimes you see it happen and you're like, this should be a crime in some way. But yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, you should always tip, you're providing a service, and tip what tip what
Yeah.
you have, don't like over give, but just
Mm-hmm.
like a reasonable
Yeah.
request, I think.
Yeah.
For
I
sure.
mean, treat others as you would like to be treated. Do you feel like you're always paid what you deserve?
Mm-hmm.
No. So do what you can.
Yeah.
And when I do my merch table, because I'm just a solo person, I don't usually have anybody at the merch table. So I have a bunch of stuff on there, and I have a little sign that says "Take what you want, tip what you can," or and usually that does all right. Sometimes that bucket will be really thin, and it'll be $30-$40 worth of
Merchandise.
merch just missing. But that's just part of it.
Yeah.
When I was one time when I was playing, this is before I had a merch table or anything,
Sure.
and I'd just have a little stand with a few CDs on it and maybe a couple stickers next to my tip bucket at a restaurant. And I was taking a break, and a guy walked up to me and says, "Oh, I really, really liked such and such song you did." And I says, "Oh, great." And he talked to me for about a half an hour. And I said, "Well, that song's on this CD right here and stuff."
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't get the CD. He didn't leave a tip. That just
One in, one out. Yeah.
yeah. It's just, and it never crossed his mind. And
Yeah.
I think that's why I'm saying, think about it.
Mm-hmm.
When there's a chip jar there, it's not because those people are rich and they're
Exactly.
trying to steal from you.
Yep. No, it's not. They're not the people. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, Jeremy. You've been playing music for how many years now? It's been.
Well, I guess seriously songwriting since maybe 16, 17.
Sure.
So a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would have been in the early 90s. So that's,
wow.
Yeah. So
That's crazy. Well, do you feel like your music has kind of evolved over the years? Have you noticed changes in the way you play, perform, think about music that's kind of grown and transitioned over the years?
yeah, I couldn't play a bar chord until I was in my 40s.
Wow.
So that makes a big difference. When I first started, got a guitar and started, learning chords, I'd learn a chord and write a song and learn another chord and write a song. And that's, they were so very, very simple. And a lot of times, you'd have 3 or 4 songs with the same chords in it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I guess my music is more complex. I guess I have more skills, so I'm able to get across my original idea instead of just happening upon something that
Yes.
works. It's happy accidents. I have more control over my craft.
The sounds
Yeah.
and what you're producing, what you're
Mhm.
putting out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's important. Do you feel like the audience almost like I'm sure you have like longtime fans, I'm sure,
Mhm.
like people that have been following you. Have you heard maybe from them? Has anybody ever mentioned it to you being like, I noticed this change?
Yeah,
Because I feel like that's
sometimes it's like what
there's some things that like
yeah,
you
playing further up the neck on that
Exactly.
one, and and a lot of people have their certain type of my daughter and I joke that I play fast songs and slow fast sad songs and slow sad songs. I do have some medium speed
Sure.
sad songs, but there's people that like my slower stuff, or they don't like the higher, more old time adjacent kind of the higher tenor vocals, or they do like that stuff. So and I do have a pretty broad variety of within what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, I think it really has changed, and I try to, I really started playing live probably around, other than occasionally playing, at a party or somebody's wedding or something like that. Probably about 2003, and there are people that saw me back then that
Sure.
see me now, and it's like, or don't come and see me now. It's like, please come and see me now because the stuff is
so
I
much
actually
different.
practice
Yeah.
now. You know, it's like the music is a lot different. But some of the, I mean, I'm still playing some songs I wrote when I was 17. So,
Wow.
So and you know, you can still, even if you're not a, you know, a great musician or whatever, you can still happen upon things that work. You know, and a song doesn't have to be, you know, Beethoven or whatever. You know, a folk song can be one chord. You know, it's and it could work, and everybody could love it. Everybody want to sing along, and there's some kind of little magic to it. It's more than just the sum of its parts.
Yes, exactly. That's a great way of putting it too. Really, yeah. I think it includes the audience participating, even if that's just listening. You know, just that changes.
Yeah, if my
so
know,
much.
we live in a really small house, and
Yeah,
my
yeah.
daughter will be sitting in a chair, and it's like, and I'll be playing a song. I know if she starts crying that I'm doing a good job. You know, it's just like, well, that one must work. You know,
That's
because we're
incredible.
sensitive people. So,
How do you feel like your daughter sees your music playing? Do you feel like she's getting the bug too?
Yeah. She's a drummer now. You know, she'd messed around with different things. You know, there's always been instruments around. So,
Sure.
And and she's a ballet dancer, and plans to pursue that professionally. I sat down with her. I says, you know, you're getting at the age you really need. You know, if you want to learn, you know, an instrument, what do you want to learn? She says, drums. I said, fine. You get lessons. Do lessons for a year, and then if you stick with it, you can get a set. So August she got her set.
Wow.
And the first time she sat in with, you know, I could see through the glass door and her lessons and stuff. She sat down at the drum thing, the drum set, and it's like she starts playing, and it's just like she really took to it too.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then it just dawned on me, well, she's been dancing since she was 3 and being instructed what to do with this leg and what to do with that leg.
Exactly.
And that's what it
really boils down to. That's
what she's just dancing, sitting on a stool, you know,
dancing with her hands. You know.
And
wow.
So she's into it. We don't play together yet.
Okay,
You know,
interesting.
I try to not push those kind of things, but she's interested. But it's still kind of, you know, do I want this to be something I do with Dad, or is this just mine?
A solo kind of.
And I'm totally cool with that. So.
You know, you kind of brought up a thought, and that is, you know, like I've only seen you with a guitar, really, and but like, what other instruments are you familiar that you can like maybe work your way around a little bit?
Well, funny you ask. I've for recording and stuff, that I had a friend give me a bass years ago, and I messed around with it, and I never could really work it out that it worked in, you know, with my recordings and stuff. But I'd always said that I would wait when I was 50. I'd start a rock band, and so I started playing with a guy that plays with me sometimes, plays electric, and I was like, well, you know. And this goes back to seeing this group, Horse Girl. It's 3 young women from Chicago, and they don't play like a standard bass. They play a bass 6, which is like it's tuned like a regular guitar. It's not like a 6-string. It's not a 6-string bass. It's a bass 6. It's and it came out in the '60s, and Wichita Lineman. The opening intro of that's done on a bass 6.
Interesting.
So, well, we went and saw them. I was like, and the two women that play guitar would pass it back to each other depending on what songs it were. But one was mainly played the bass 6. But I was like, wow, and you're doing chords, and they're doing it's like so. A couple months ago, I bought a bass 6, and I've been adapting my style to it. So, and I'm hoping to eventually put together an electric trio.
That would be incredible.
And adapt what I've been playing, and so yeah, that's the other thing. But it's really just playing guitar that's got bigger strings on it, and it's longer and stuff. So, yeah.
Do you see that coming into fruition, like the whole trio, is sometime soon? Is that something to be looking forward to?
It'll probably be a year,
Okay.
because I've got to put the band together, and which is not as hard when it's a trio, and we've got to practice. So.
Definitely, definitely.
But I might be able to work it out. So I'm doing some like open rehearsals where I have somewhere, because I've talked to people in the past when I was thinking about doing it, and they said, "Oh yeah, sure, you could do that." Where we would have rehearsals, but it would be public. So
interesting. Yeah, put some flyers out. Put them.
Yeah.
See what comes walking through the door. You never know. The only way to know is by just putting the word out there.
Yeah, and you can scare off some people, and you might intrigue other people, and it's like, I'm not going to go see them. They can't even play that one song.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, let me ask you this. Do you have some upcoming shows later, near the end of this year in November that you would like to
I usually play from March through October, and sometimes I pick up a show here and there during the winter, but I don't usually book. I kind of wait for somebody to contact me. I played at Charlie's a few times over the winter. Of course, tomorrow I have a show with John Spangler from 6 to 9 at Three Roads in Lynchburg. And October the 10th, I've got a solo show at Three Roads here in Farmville. And I may or may not have somebody accompanying me, Mr. James Tillman. He's heading back to Nashville, so he may or may not be with me on a couple of dates. So, but that's October 10th from 6 to 9 in Farmville Three Roads, and then October 24th I'll be solo at Three Roads in Lynchburg from 7 to 10, and again I might have James Tillman with me playing. He's a wonderful guitar player, and he plays lead, and he's a songwriter as well, and sometimes he opens up for my shows.
Interesting.
And then on the 29th, I'll be at the Fish and Pig, and I'm having a young woman songwriter, Miss Brittany K. Neal, will be opening for me, and she's really fabulous. She's not booking anything on her own this year. She's kind of feeling her way out around, but so I've gotten her to open a few times for me. So.
Wow. All right. Well, that's a lot to look forward to. And you did bring a couple of songs prepared today that you would like to play.
Sure. Yeah.
I believe. And so we're going to go ahead and jump into that segment. While you get set up over there, I just would like to mention once again that the Farmville Spotlight is brought to you by North Street Press Club in downtown Farmville. They're located at 127 North Street, and you can call in, order some food today for pickup, 434-392-9444. Jeremy's going to be playing some music once he's all set up, so we're going to take a quick commercial break, but we'll be right back after this.
Craving great food and drinks in downtown Farmville? North Street Press Club is the place to be. Enjoy global grub and local vibes, whether you're dining in or relaxing on our patio. Good times are always on tap. Call us at 434-392-9444 for easy pickup or to discuss your catering needs. Let's make your next event delicious.
So good.
Visit North Street Press Club today, where food, drinks, and fun meet.
Welcome to Loserville, come right in. Got everything you need and served with a grin. The liquor and the water and so is the wine. But you'll be so low you won't even mind. Here is the story I'd like to tell. You might like the words and you might like their smell. These zombies, Nazis are ready too. Maybe laughing or crying before we are through. ain't what you want. It ain't what you know. The devil will get you before you go. Been trying too hard and trying too long to paint you a picture, to write you a song. Spent all my money and half my time. Is there anyone out there even seem to mind? There's a pain in my heart, a pain in my head, between never being born and being dead. Started too late, was a failure too soon. Be drunk and high and howling at the moon. It ain't what you want. It ain't what you know. The devil will get you before you go. Welcome to Loserville, enjoy your stay. You can slip out to smoke, but you can't get away. I ride high for a bit and then get knocked down. Don't worry, we're all losers in this dead-end town. There's the story, you're part of it too. You can't sing the songs if you don't know the blues. You'll be a player, a picker, a partner in crime. That bartender there has your last thin dime. It ain't what you want. It ain't what you know. The devil will get you before you go. The devil will get you before you go. Watch the devil get you before you go.
Wow, Jeremy, that was great, man.
Thank you.
I heard you play live already, but like it's still so good. I wouldn't even consider myself a folk fan, really. I do like Americana. I think like a great example is like Tom Waits, which is kind of like the kind of rough and gruff kind of like
I cut
soulful.
my teeth on Tom Waits.
Yeah. But I mean, that was just really great, man. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that so? That's an original.
Yes.
And which one is that called?
Loserville.
That's great. So good. Okay. All right, you got one more for us? We got about 5 minutes left.
Oh, okay. Yeah. This is a fan favorite.
All
this
right.
is a fairly recent one. This is kind of Christmas adjacent.
Oh, beautiful. I'd love to hear it.
And so an angel lying sideways and I was just too cold to think. Spend the whole night waiting for something to happen outside this roll of rain. Inside there's a party to which I'm not invited. I said I'd meet you, don't wanna let you down. No matter waiting, stand a pretty decoration, lights reflected on this frozen ground. She's just a decoration that's been knocked over, maybe by the wind, the sun, devilish hand. Just an angel, she's lying sideways. Least she doesn't have much further to fall. Here she comes now with a bunch of her friends. I can tell she been drinking, oh Lord, just by the smile. Someone be in that party, arm in arm, and I'll be in heaven for just a little while. Just a decoration that's been knocked over, maybe by the wind, the sun, devilish hand. She's just an angel, she's lying sideways. Least she doesn't have much further to fall. She don't have much further to fall.
That was beautiful, Jeremy. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for that.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate that, man. That was perfect timing. Our camera just cut off. We're still running audio, though. So I just want to thank you so much for coming in today, Jeremy.
thank you.
I feel like this interview could have gone on for another hour, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
There's just so much material to go
I've
through.
been cooped up and sick for so long, you know.
I hear you, man. I hear you. Well, again, we want to thank you today. Good luck with your performance tomorrow. And, we're looking forward to hearing other shows that you have. What's the best way for people to follow you, check you out if they're interested?
Go to Instagram, and that would be J Elder, J, the letter J, J Elder at 1974 at Instagram or YouTube. Instagram will get you more like, what's going on right now.
Sure.
YouTube will, I got a lot of stuff on YouTube. And if you want to buy my music, go to Bandcamp. It's Jeremy Elder at bandcamp.com.
Beautiful. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming in. This has been the Farmville Spotlight, brought to you by North Street Press Club in downtown Farmville. You can give them a call today at 434-392-9444. Thanks for listening once again, and we'll see you the last Thursday of, October. Last Thursday of October from 4 to 5 p.m. on WFLO AM 870 in Farmville. Good night.